So let's talk about postdoctoral studies. And as my title implies, like, really? We just finished our first year. Why are we talking about postdocs? Well, I'm going to keep this very brief for you today, but the importance for me about talking about postdocs with all of you is that, as we've said, time will fly by. And before you know it, you'll be thinking about postdocs. And so I'd like to just have it in your mind about what a postdoc is, what it could be, and how you might prepare yourself moving forward to successfully get a postdoc in the future. So what exactly is a postdoc? Formally, anything after your doctoral degree is a postdoc. I might say to myself, I'm in a postdoc year because it's post my doctoral degree. But really what this kind of constitutes for most people is this kind of bridge between when you get your degree and your actual licensure. And I think that's the traditional kind of definition of a postdoc. Now, there are really kind of three types of postdocs. In my estimation, there might be more that I just am not thinking about, but this is the way I really think about kind of the types of postdocs. There's the formal APIC, APA accredited postdocs. And I put a link in here later in the slides. There's the formal non-accredited, non-affiliated with APIC postdocs, and there's just the informal. Like, I need a job to get some hours so I can get licensed. That would be the informalist. I think I made that word up, but that would be the most informal type of a postdoc. So what's the difference? The formal APA, APIC affiliated and accredited postdocs are the same as internships. They're the same as doctoral programs, meaning they went before the APA commissioners. The APA commissioners reviewed the training program. They have specific requirements that have to be met, and those require supervision requirements. They require salary requirements. They require training elements, like, how much training you get, so didactic kind of elements to it. And they've been looked at by other people to assure their quality. The formal non-accredited, typically, and I don't want to speak too generally, but typically this just means the training directors didn't want to go through all that stuff. They're still committed to training potentially. They're still committed to the experience that their postdocs have. They just didn't want to go through all the stuff. They didn't want to pay the fees. They didn't want to go through the reviews. And I think there's big differences between those two, but I'm a little biased because I'm an APA commissioner. But I think one of the things that's important is that for you as a student, if you're in this non-accredited postdoc, there's nowhere to go if things aren't going well. So, like, there's no one to complain to. There's no one to go to. There's no, like, it is. There's nothing there's no consequence of, let's say they lose their funding or they cut their funding by $10,000 a year, or they don't offer you health insurance benefits anymore, or, they cancel half of their didactic trainings. Like, there's no one to complain to. There's no retribution. Retribution is a weird word there, but there's just nothing to do about that. The same is with the informal. Like, a lot of times informal is like, I'm going to hire you into my practice. You're going to do work for me. In practice, I don't necessarily mean private practice, but I'm going to hire you into the agency. You're going to be an employee, and we're going to offer you supervision that meets the licensure requirements. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think as you go from the formal and you go down this list, I think it's just more on you as a student at this point, a doctoral level person, to kind of do your homework and figure out what's going on, who's going to be doing what, are people going to be doing what you ask of them. So those are generally the types of postdocs. in this last slide, I'm going to briefly address where do you find postdocs and what's the importance of them. And the importance, depends largely on your career goals. If you, for example, and none of you, I don't think, want to do this, but you want to be a neuropsychologist. Well, neuropsych people often, if you don't have a postdoc, you're not going to be able to kind of be certified and accepted into the club. So there may be like specialty designations that you're interested in that kind of require either formally or informally a formal postdoc. The other kind of common reason that people do a postdoc is they want a research career. So you find a postdoc that has a grant-funded research opportunity that coincides with it. And so not only are you doing clinical training, but you're doing research training as part of your postdoc with the idea of eventually landing a tenure track faculty position. Those are the two probably most common. So a specialty designation as well as a desire to kind of get a faculty gig and a faculty appointment in doing research. Outside of that, I personally, and I've always told you this is a Jim opinion, like I personally don't know that I know the value of a formal postdoc. I'm sorry, I left one out. The other one is maybe a VA position. VA positions tend to be a little bit inbreeding in that if you didn't do an internship at a VA, you didn't do a postdoc at a VA, it's harder to get a job at a VA. So that might be the third thing that I would throw in there. All right, so where do I find them? I've given you a number of resources here. The first is APIC. We talked about this in class already. I've given you the link here. APIC lists all of the APA accredited postdocs here. They have information about how to pursue a postdoc. There's a lot of information here. The one that we talked about for internship that I would also recommend here is there's an email list where if you get put on that, they'll email you information about postdocs, new postdocs, postdocs that have been recently accredited, changes to postdoctoral settings, etc. So I would strongly recommend signing up for that email list. If you don't want the emails, just delete them, right? Or send them to a specific folder and you can read them when you have the chance. We do have a program alumni Facebook account that I usually tell students about, including all of you here. If you go to Facebook and you type in Rowan Ph.D. in clinical psych alumni, I would sign up there. You don't actually have to be an alumni. Nobody checks it. You can sign up when you want. But what happens when we get announcements in the clinical office about a postdoc, which we do very frequently, we post them there. So that would be the place that you would get information that's been sent to the clinical office about possible postdocs. Obviously, we'd love students to keep in contact and to update and to post. It hasn't been very active, but at the very least, that would be a place where you can go and find postdoc information. Professional organizations often have postdocs that they send out via their email lists again, or they post at websites. So I would encourage you to look into those. There's word of mouth. A lot of times if you're at your internship site, there's information that internship site directors get about postdocs. There's postdocs that other people have been in. Like if you're in that VA system, often there may be a internship and a postdoc available so that people will be talking about how to get the postdoc at the particular site you're at. So that's another final way. And I'm probably leaving out a whole bunch of other things here that are out there and available. This is just a part of you being active in your organizations, active in APAGS, active in other places. And I always like to say, like, once you sign up for those lists, you'll get more stuff than you want, but you'll also get these diamonds in the rough where you get like, oh, I didn't know that postdoc existed, and I got it through that email list that I signed up for. So it's up to you, obviously, of course, but that's the other way that you'll often hear about postdocs. And that's it. That's a brief just kind of overview of postdocs and what to do. Obviously, it's again down the road for you guys a little bit, but I think the more you think about your career path, your career future, And the more I can introduce you to these resources earlier in your training, the better it will be for me. So I hope that helps.